start the recording now. So then we'll be able to post this online and you'll be able to find it later, but on NDOT's website. So I'd like to let everyone know that the meeting's recording. But anyway, I'll introduce myself. I'm Amy Birch. I'm the traffic engineer and consultant that's working with NDOT to help facilitate the management of this traffic calming program, and specifically been the engineer working on this project on Hamilton Avenue. And also with me joining is Abigail McCown, and she's with Kimley Horn, another consulting firm that works with us. So she'll be monitoring the chat box if we have questions. We have a small group, so feel free to speak and ask questions. But if anyone just wants to use the chat box, she'll be helping me monitor that as we go along. So be sure to answer questions as they come up. So Abigail, just let me know if there's anything in the chat that I miss as we go along. So,
got it.
All right. So, we're here. This is our second time to meet with you all. We met before about 6 months ago. And so during that time, we've put a more detailed plan together and are ready to present that. But we're going to talk about a few pieces of background information for anyone that may not have been at the first meeting or is just now tuning in to this, so they're aware of what we're doing, what we're talking about. So just first off, traffic calming, what is it? What are we talking about? Our program, NDOT's program, is, we call it the neighborhood street traffic calming program. And that's because we focus on residential neighborhood streets similar to Hamilton. And what we're trying to do is implement physical solutions that encourage lower speeds over the length of a street and really get slower speeds. That's what we're targeting is a comfortable residential appropriate speed on these streets. So we talk about oftentimes the 3 E's of traffic calming, and that's education, educating folks why we believe that slower speeds in residential neighborhoods are appropriate, and what is traffic calming. That's kind of part of what we're doing here. Then enforcement is, of course, what the police department does. And then engineering is what this program focuses on, and that's how do we modify the street to change driver behavior and get slower speeds. And one of the big reasons why the department and the city is focused on traffic calming is because of the correlation between high speed and a pedestrian's likelihood of a fatality if struck by a vehicle going at a high speed. So this diagram is showing that correlation. So on the left side, we see at 25 miles per hour, if a pedestrian is struck by a vehicle, they have an 89% chance of survival. And as that speed goes up to 35 miles per hour, the likelihood of survival goes down to 68%. And then as it goes up to 45 miles per hour, that chance of survival goes way down to 35%. So we're targeting this program towards safety on residential streets because of these metrics that we know are true. So this program is obviously very popular. When this street was selected in February of 2023, we had 464 neighborhood streets that were requesting traffic calming. And so we have a methodology and prioritization process and how we select those streets based on data that we collect on the street and characteristics of those streets, and are able to score all the streets. And so when this street was selected, 26 neighborhood streets were selected, and it was because it scored at the top of that 464 streets. The map on the right is showing the pink lines are all the streets that have at that time requested traffic calming. So it's a very popular program. And outside of the program, because we focus on speeding and speed reduction in residential streets, there may be other things that come up. And we always like to plug the hub Hub Nashville for services that residents need in case you're unaware of the hub and how to get in touch with the hub. These are issues like streetlights are out, signs have been knocked down, a traffic signal is not working properly, things like that. They're maintenance related, but also requests for new signs or issues with intersections that you may be experiencing. This is a great way to reach the right department. And it's not all just NDOT issues. It's, NES, it's stormwater, if your storm drains clogged, things like that. This is where you can report it. It's kind of like a one-stop shop and disseminates that information and request to the correct department and person. It also gives you a request number so you can follow up on it if you haven't received some feedback. So it's dial 311 or use the app or hub.Nashville.gov. So, but let's get back to Hamilton Avenue now and talk about the project we're here presenting to you on. So this is just a location map showing the length of our project, which is Hamilton Avenue between 8th Avenue South and Martin Street. And I'm showing in there the 2 all-way stops that are on this segment of the roadway. And also, so the green line is indicating that Hamilton Avenue is a traffic calming street that's in progress. And this is in the legend on the left of your screen. And then the blue dotted lines are showing that vertical measures have been installed on those streets. So that's on Martin and the other end of Hamilton, of course. And then the pink line, pinkish purple lines are where traffic calming has been requested, but it hasn't been selected for a project yet. So that's just to give you some perspective of where we are on the street and some surrounding streets. So the
Forgive
traffic.
me, I can't tell the colors apart.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't know if it's so what's on Hagen? Is that application or completed?
An application has been applied for.
Okay, and then it looks like More East is also applied for?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
So let's talk about some traffic calming measures that we're presenting on the plan on Hamilton Avenue. We're looking at, we're recommending speed cushions. And so I'm showing several pictures of speed cushions. You're probably very familiar if you live on this street and there are these devices already installed nearby, but they're the rubberized modular devices and they're drilled into the pavement, and we can configure them in multiple different configurations based on how wide the street is, what the striping pattern on the street is, whether they're striping there or not, or presence of bike lanes, on-street parking, and so forth. So these devices have the white markings on them that are reflective at night from vehicles' headlights, and they have the arrows showing the direction of travel. In the bottom right corner picture, sometimes we'll put them in sections of 3, and so they'll include the center line striping on the middle device. But the real main differentiation between speed cushions and other type of hump devices are the gaps in the configuration, and that's for emergency vehicles and to be able to straddle them more easy. Passenger vehicles have a more narrow width between the tires, so they can't straddle and go over them without being affected by the gaps. So but the larger fire trucks and ambulances have a little bit wider wheelbase, and so they aren't impacted as much as if it were solid all the way across. So that is one main reason why NDOT likes to use this type of device on the streets, to maintain some or have less impact for the emergency vehicles. So Then we can also make them longer or shorter, depending on the type of street and just the characteristics of the traffic volume and speed that we have. So we will often make them lengthwise 7 feet in more urban areas, but we'll also go to 10.5 feet long and 14-foot long. And when they're longer than 7, they'll have a flat piece in there, and you can kind of see that in the picture on the bottom left. That makes them a little bit more smoother to travel over, so not quite as abrupt, but still very effective. And when we install these speed cushions, we will place warning signs with them, like you see in the picture on the top left, and it'll say speed cushions and then the advisory speed plaque of 20 miles per hour. As you can see, they come in we can configure them in several arrangements. Like sometimes we'll use the white delineator post, like you see in the bottom right, to keep traffic from trying to drive over them and circumvent the device, particularly when we have a bike lane, or in this case, I believe it's kind of on-street parking or just a wide shoulder. So we'll use that to keep people from going around, because they will, we've learned, try to go around the devices sometimes. And you may see drivers try to do like one wheel on and one wheel off and use the gap, but they're still required to slow down, or still have to slow down some to do that. And I personally believe that it's the most comfortable way to travel over them is straight over the device, the cushion. So we have, NDOT has installed these types of vertical measures in a lot of places around the city now. And we've done some before-after analysis to see what's the effect. Are they working? Are they doing what the the national data says they're supposed to do? And we found that it has, they are very effective. So we've done a study of 6 different streets where we've installed the 7-foot long speed cushions, and done a comparison of the average speed on the street as well as the 85th percentile speed. So the graph on your left is showing the comparison of the before after for the average speed. So before, we were seeing average speeds on these 6 streets of 31 miles per hour, and then that went down to 22 miles per hour, where the speed limit is 25. So that was our kind of goal there. And then on the right, the 85th percentile speed, that's the speed that 85% of the traffic going that we've counted is going that speed or below. So the 85th percentile speed comparison before after was 37 to 25 miles per hour. So we're finding that these are very effective, and we're in doing these studies, we're not measuring like right at the device either. We're measuring between them, because that's really what we want the effective speed to be, is between the cushions to be around the 25 miles per hour. So they're very effective. And then we're also in the case of Hamilton Avenue, recommending a radar feedback sign. These are they're just signs placed, and they have the radar detection to give drivers that feedback of what their speed is. So they will show your speed, and then if your speed is above the posted speed limit and you're approaching this sign, then it will flash at you. So they provide that constant feedback, but also we get data collection from these devices, so we can monitor how they're working, and or how it's working, and if the speeds are appropriate. So in some of these before after studies that we have done, where we've installed these type of signs, we've seen an average reduction of 6 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile speed was coming down about 7 miles per hour. So these have been pretty effective as well. Another tool and tactic that we're recommending for Hamilton is some tightening of intersections with painted bulb outs and vertical delineators to narrow the intersections, shorten crossing distances for pedestrians, as well as slow the turning movements at intersections that vehicles take, so as they're turning left or right at the intersection, they're having to take those movements slower because it's just a tighter radius, tighter intersection. So this picture is showing that kind of striping and the delineators there. So let's look at the plan for Hamilton. And this is just the overview plan. We're going to drill into the zoomed in plan after, but I'll just kind of set the stage for you here with our symbols and everything. That 8th Avenue is on the left side of the screen. You can see where Reservoir Park is, and then the pink line or the bolded line is showing the length of our project between 8th and Martin on the right side. Then our trapezoidal Cs are where we're recommending the speed cushions to be installed. The Bs are at the intersections at Fort Negley and at Riley, where we're recommending the tighter radii to be those large wide intersections to be tightened up with some striping and the flexible delineator post. And then on the left side, we have a radar feedback sign as you're going from 8th towards the Riley intersection. So that's our overview, and then I will go into our sheet by sheet look at each one so you can get a closer look. So this sheet is showing 8th Avenue over here on the left again, and the section, so I'll work left to right on the screen, but this section of Hamilton, we would install that radar feedback sign after you've come off of 8th and then are approaching Riley Boulevard to give reminders to drivers about what the posted speed limit is, as well as what their speed is as they approach that. Then we have a closer look at this Riley Boulevard intersection, but you can see here the pavement striping that would go in, but we have another sheet that I'll show in a minute what these two intersections look like closer in, but that's the bulb outs that we're talking about. And then as we go west of Fort Negley, I know there's a development here on the north side, so we took that into consideration on where to place this. And of course, Fort Negley is a always stop intersection. So, spacing away from that always stop intersection, but placing cushions to make sure that speed doesn't pick back up after you leave that always stop and are headed east. So we have a configuration here of 3 cushions. There would be signage as well. And then working further in, we have another set. So you can kind of see this is where the townhome development is on the north west corner of Hamilton and Hagen. That's pretty much done, I believe, with construction, and this commercial building on the south side. So we have a set there, kind of between the head-in parking that's there and then that driveway with signage. And then between Hagen and Martin would be a set, and it's located, we're marking the addresses of those homes. So it's right in front of 614 and about 617 is the address there. And on these sheets, we're showing, pictures of about what that would look like. We're just showing a kind of a zoomed in look of like what that foot spacing is as these are laid out onto the road, so you can see that. So the first location where the cushions our proposed would be a three wide section, and these are the 7-foot long cushions. Like I said earlier, we use the 7-foot more in the more urban areas where we have dense driveways and really expect the slower speeds and are looking for the slower speeds after this installation. But this shows the what those gaps are between and how that falls into the 28 feet of pavement there. And then the other two are more narrow pavement width. So we've gone with the one cushion in each lane configuration with about a 4-foot gap between. So now I'll move on to the bulb out, and then we can pause for questions after that. But this is the paint and the painted and striped bulb outs that would go into the intersection. With the white dots that you see are the flexible delineator posts that would kind of go behind that white line to physically keep drivers from doing that, making those turns too wide or too fast, and gives that visual constraint for traveling through the intersection. We'll place those such that the larger vehicles that are industrial related that still have to travel on some of these streets can make those turning movements, but the white lines will be as tight as we think we can make those to really tighten the intersection. And this one is Hamilton and Fort Negley intersection, similar thing. And one thing that is of note here on Hamilton is narrowing this down to just the 1-lane approach. We don't find that dedicated left turn lane is needed. We still need to accommodate the larger vehicle movements, but as far as the volume of traffic, it's not needing that left turn. So we would bulb out that extra area and just make this intersection tighter and slower as the turn movements go. We did look at the possibility of a circular intersection here, a traffic circle, but because of those industrial vehicles, we didn't find that we could accommodate that. So I did want to mention that because I think it was something that we talked about at the first meeting. So this was another solution that we found that we could do for a wide intersection like this and still accommodate the larger vehicles. Okay, are there any questions on the design? I'll pause there before we go into our next steps. I'll go back to the overview sheet if that's helpful.
I have a question.
Okay.
When the study for this happened, does population density have anything to do with where things are chosen to be placed? Or because from an outsider, it seems all of the R and B stuff is happening where there are like 3 or 4 properties of residential homes, and everything on the right where the C's are is where there are now thousands of people living. And as someone that is impacted every day by this, it seems like and I'm not trying to discredit the work that you guys have done. It just seems like a lot of effort is going into a space that there's no one living. So, for example, the radar feedback sign being 97 feet east of 8th Avenue, there's the credit union right there and sidewalks. Whereas on the Hamilton side, east of Fort Negley, that's where the townhomes and particularly the 600 block of Hamilton, we don't have sidewalks. So it feels like a lot of effort is being placed where there's just roads and not actually slowing down where there are a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great question. We look at it as kind of like a holistic, like the full length of the street. That was what was requested for traffic calming on Hamilton was between 8th and Martin. Yeah, we found that you're right. There's not as many homes down on the west end of the street, but what we're trying to do is set the mood and the tone as you come onto the street. Get that speed slow and consistent and along the full length of it. So as drivers are approaching and getting into the more residential area, that they're already in that mindset of this is a different kind of street. This is a street that should be driven slowly, and there's more things ahead. And the cushions are certainly the most effective tool that we have to slowing that traffic. So putting that in that area is what we think is going to be able to slow the drivers down in that section the most. We do have some limitations on when we can install the vertical measures. A lot of things that we're looking at are the grade of the road, so we couldn't actually install one between 8th and Riley because the grade is so steep. We can't put it on steep grade. Yep. So that was one factor that went into the decision making there. And then we're also looking at driveways, and that is often a real challenge in the urban areas of where we can place them, because the driveways are often not aligned across from each other. They're kind of offset, and then we're trying to place these devices such that people aren't having to back over one sideways as they're backing out of their driveway or turning onto their driveway. So those are some of the criteria that we're looking at as we're laying these out. We're also trying to space them away from all-way stops. So we don't put them too close to all-way stops, because the all-way stop, drivers are supposed to be stopping there. So we're already starting at like a slower speed, and then we want to maintain that. So we're looking at spacing them a certain distance away from those stop signs. And then our series kind of targets that we're looking for is about 400 feet. It may range because of some, intersection placements or driveway placements, but what we're trying to do is a series of around 400 feet between each set of cushions. That's our sweet spot. We can't always hit it because of all the different, correct limitations of where we can put them. But so that's what I think we've been able to maintain pretty well in this section. We do have all that open cut section, but just west of Hagen, where we tried to avoid that section, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so it does. And I can't speak for the entire neighborhood, and Andrew, Aaron, and if you guys want to chime in, I live between Hagen and Martin, and 3 other people here also live there. If you look on the west side of Hagen, between Fort Negley and Hagen, there's no residential, there's no sidewalk. It's just a giant parking lot on the south side. On the north side, there are like 5 townhomes with street parking, but everyone has off-street parking. That particular space is a raceway. That's where people pick up speed. And I know that one speed bump there is going to help. My personal greatest concern is Hagen and Hamilton. And again, not trying to discredit any of this study, we've just seen our neighborhood grow exponentially since this was even applied for. And it just feels like there isn't enough work being done in the places where it matters most. Because if that radar and the bulb outs didn't exist, people are still gonna, I'm gonna say, drive quicker through our neighborhood because it's out of sight, out of mind. And I don't know if we can do anything about that, but like a stop sign, I know we talked about this 6 months ago. So here's my biggest, stick with me if you can, and I'm sorry if
Yeah.
I'm detracting. And I also know that you're not a stop sign girl, but I feel like I need to bring this up because it's what we can. So here's what happens. Hagen Street driving south is a big uphill road.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hit the stop sign facing south, there is street parking on the north side of the road west of Hagen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm with you.
So in order to take a right or a left onto Hamilton, southbound from Hagen, you have to pull out into the intersection. Same thing going south. If you're leaving from the Queens lot, driving north, there's street parking on the south side of Hamilton. And right now, there's a bunch of construction happening on the south side. So,
Mm-hmm.
particularly that intersection, cars are driving well into the traffic lane in order to be seen. On the northeast corner of Hamilton and Hagen, there's a recording studio, which has a big open parking lot. And if cars are parked there, there are no sight lines to see Hamilton. So, looking at this, sure, people may be going slower, but if if we're looking for safety, it seems like something at that intersection would be infinitely more helpful than a speed bump 700 feet to the east or the west. Um, because I've seen cars slamming on the brakes, because I've seen all this, just because of sight lines alone, a bulb out would have just any sort of help
Mm-hmm.
would be great there. And there are no sidewalks on the 600 side of Hamilton, and I don't see any way that they're going to be able to build them up there. So I feel passionate that this one block is getting screwed over repeatedly because we were at the line of residential to industrial, and we just seem to be forgotten about. Because if you're east of Martin, you've got this. If you're west of Hagen, you've got this. But like, it's not enjoyable for us to be at that 600 block and not feel safe or protected. And I know other neighbors that live on that block can't back out of their driveway safely because there are cars street parked, and if they're not stopping, it's just like we're not going to win. During soccer, or when people are parking in our neighborhoods, we just can't see. We can't walk. We can't see, and having no way to have traffic stop is getting really frustrating.
And
Sorry to get on a soapbox, but
I'm gonna jump in right there too. Queens is now opening a restaurant on the bottom and a bar on the top, and there's no parking for that. So people are lining up along the block and essentially making it a one road street where people are stopping to let people go through, and then vice versa. And like Erin and the neighbor next to her have the brunt of the thing because they're parking halfway on their lawns and then halfway in the street. So it's essentially a one lane road now with no signs. Um, and I think this will help people slow down, but it still won't fix any of the traffic problems that we have.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a good point to make. And we always, have to remember this. We're not the traffic calming project is probably not going to fix all the problems, but we think it's going to contribute to a solution and help with the situation. So, as once these speed cushions are installed and we get that more consistent, slower speed, even between the sets of cushions, it's going to be slower. As our data has shown where we've installed these elsewhere, the speed is going to be slower. And so it's going to be easier to see or and back out of driveways because of that. I mean, it
it's
might
not
be incremental. It might be
it,
incremental.
it won't change the sight lines. It'll just slow down the danger, which I understand was like slide number 1 on your presentation. It's better getting hit by 25 instead of 35, but it you know it feels like this, whenever this first survey was done, we had a third less residents living over on our half of the block. And now that it has become more populated, it doesn't feel like it's actually fixing the spots that need to be fixed. It's fixing what happened 12 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I think what we're looking at in terms of this street having been selected is that there was it scored high enough based on the data that we collected. So it was selected. That was the study that was done to determine if traffic calming was needed here. It was determined that it was needed, and then we came together and put together a plan for it. So you know, I think what we're trying to do is slow down the traffic on the street, and then put it in and design it in a way that we think is going to work and not cause other issues. But and that's just typically what we do. We place them about 400 feet apart, and that's about what this is spaced at.
Can we hypothetically just run down this route? And if you don't have the answers and we have to move on, that's also fine too.
Yeah.
If you were to replace the easternmost Cs, the one on the west and east of Hagen, with a stop sign on Hagen, with your knowledge of this study and everything, how would that change the end all goal at all?
How would that change the goal? So
yeah, I mean, like, what would keep you from putting a four-way on Hagen?
that is something separate, and I think, you know, we talked about this before, that's something that is looked at based on the traffic volume and the need to have the stop there because the volume of the two cross streets, but also things go into play as far as you know, sight lines and things like that. So that can be looked at. We don't use that tool in our toolbox for traffic calming. We don't do the stop signs. So had a stop sign been installed before we collected data, and you know, this is super hypothetical, but you know, it may have had lower speed. I don't know, but we don't typically take that into consideration in the analysis of what's selected, because we measure the street, the volume on the street and the speed on the street, and factor that into our analysis. It's not necessarily, are there stop signs? Should there be stop signs? If a stop sign were at Hagen, I'm just looking at the spacing, we probably would leave it as is, you know, the plan. You know, if a stop sign were at Hagen before we ever came and decided to do a plan, and if the speed were where it is and it was selected, the spacing between Hagen and the cushions on either side is probably about right.
So 2 questions, and then I'll shut up. Do you know if having those speed cushions where they're going to be, will that impact our ability to get a stop sign there?
I do not think so.
Okay. And then when was the initial study done for our neighborhood? Do you know?
So we collected data, it would have been in fall 22, I believe.
Okay, that makes sense.
This is the other Aaron. I see there's another Aaron. Hi, other Aaron. So going back just a little bit in regards to the new building next door to my house on 619, where there's parking right outside of my driveway where I can't get out of my driveway, which is going to cause a terrible accident. So I've contacted NDOT a couple of times in regards to that. Like, what's going to go on with that? Because the parking here is a nightmare, considering with all the apartments next door to my home and all of that. Like, what is the plan for that? Because I've heard that, you know, they didn't have like a permit for the parking, and I've called several times. But we're talking about safety in the neighborhood. That's another part of the safety for us, you know, neighbors that have been there for a while. And then we have this new thing next door, and it's just making it a nightmare.
So the traffic calming program doesn't really have anything or much to do with the development or the parking situation on whether or not there's enough parking provided. So that's kind of a separate situation. I will say that one thing we've always said as traffic engineers is that on-street parking actually slows vehicular speed to some degree, because it makes the street feel more constrained. So drivers kind of slow down as they pass by the on-street parking. It certainly depends on, whether there's striping on the road or how much volume of traffic is on the road, but it kind of sometimes ends up in this sort of like yield flow situation where you have to wait and let another car pass by because the on-street parking has like kind of narrowed the street. So that does happen. It's not our goal. That's not really in our toolbox. We don't like try to do that, but it can be a result of on-street parking. But I can't speak to anything about, the plan for the on-street parking on Hamilton or Hagen or any of these streets as it relates to the development. But if you want to put in a hub request about that, they might be able to look at it and decide if there needs to be some like no parking to corner signs to like help free up some of that visibility for drivers as they're negotiating the intersection and turning out.
Okay, thanks.
Right. I'm sorry, I can't speak specifically to that.
No worries.
Yes.
Can the other Aaron raise his hand?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when you are on Hamilton and you stop at the Martin Street and you're heading, left on this map here, people still drive very fast from that stop sign. They kind of drag race up that mild hill, and yes, in front of 617, 614, they'll be slowed down by the speed cushion. Is there anything in between, 614 and Martin Street that is in your toolbox, like a rumble strip or something?
We don't do rumble strips in this program because of we hear that there's noise associated with that that's not desirable, and so we're not using that tool anymore. In fact, in places in South Nashville where we had used it before, we've kind of replaced those with cushions where there weren't cushions on the street before. So we're not using that. Maybe another radar feedback sign, or this was a really challenging block to determine where to put the cushions and how many to put because of all the driveways that I spoke about, and us wanting to space the cushions in series at a reasonable pace, but also to keep them away from driveways at a reasonable distance. So our toolbox is pretty limited to the pavement and the striping, the delineators, and these types of cushions and radar feedback signs. That's most of what we do. So I would say no, but I could say that, it sounds like I'm hearing from you in the community that you would like something in addition on this block, like more.
Yeah, I was the originator of this traffic calming request, and being close to that Hamilton and Martin intersection, that was exactly one of the main drivers of the request.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point of a radar sign or something more would be much appreciated.
So one thing I'm thinking is, maybe this location at 614 and 17, if there's any way to move it closer to Hagen and then put another set somewhere closer to Martin. So then we had two sets between Hagen and Martin. Is that something that you all
That-
would like to see,
That
or would you rather
seems
see?
like it could help because, yeah, people love to floor it from the stop sign.
We all here care very much about our little block, and we do not get the benefits that any other block in Wedgwood, Houston has been getting. We haven't been getting new sidewalks. We don't have any paint on the roads. We're just like left to survive. And this traffic calming is exciting for us, but it seems that the traffic calming does not actually take neighborhood feedback into account, other than what's put into Hub. And the few that are here all seem to have specific ideas that are aligned that could be pretty easily fixed with just a little conversation. Because, and I've said this already, our neighborhood has changed so much in the last 12 months. What worked a year ago doesn't feel like it's going to work now.
Mhm.
So
So if we were able to get two sets between Hagen and Martin, is that something that we think
That helps.
would be helpful? And
Yeah, and even if it didn't have to be matching pairs. Like, for example, maybe, heading towards Martin to the right, one is enough, but going up the hill, two is better. I throw that out there. It doesn't have to
I
be
like your
matching.
creative thinking, but we don't
Yeah.
really do that because some drivers really don't want to go over them, so they might
swerve.
cross and try to go around
That's
in
dangerous.
the opposing lane, and so we're not trying to encourage that. But
Is there any type of conversation that you can have at NDOT or with your team to talk about a four-way at Hagen? I'm not trying to die on this hill, but actually I am. I feel like
Vince,
four-way
didn't she
at
say that there's like another thing on Metro Hub that you can put in a stop sign request?
Yeah, and it requires a lot of things more than just submit. So I've gone through that. Like, you need to have like 5 people approve it or something. It's not just as simple as like,
Yeah,
ping, I want a stop sign.
I went through that
all-
for this traffic calming too.
Yeah, I feel like a speed cushion is a Band-Aid, whereas a stop sign could be a fix. And it feels like if we're trying to traffic calm, having them stop in the dead center of where this raceway is, with having no scientific knowledge to back this up, feels like it would be a better fix than 2 sets of speed bumps that you can still go 30 miles per hour over. And there's just not enough safety in that particular 2-block radius to protect the people that actually live there. And I feel like a stop sign would make people stop. There's probably an algorithm to figure out if X at stop and then if X at bump.
I love that Amy said, this design, even with two there between Hagen and Martin, would accommodate a stop sign there. Let's go at it from multiple angles.
All I'm saying is, like, in 10 minutes,
I'll share
we can
again.
put 2 stop signs up and this could be done.
Yeah.
Just bing, 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 bing. All right, good. I'm done for now.
I will share again about the always stop at Hagen and Hamilton. I do know or remember that your former councilman had asked about it and spoke in favor of it as well. So I don't know where that ended, but I'll bring it back up. And in the meantime, we will see if we can finagle a way to avoid all the driveways and all the construction and the so forth, to see if we can get 2 sets between Hagen and Martin.
And if it's impossible, then
Well,
further signage pointing at
Yeah.
Martin would be great.
Yeah, sounds good.
Is there a way to get maybe a representative that could address all these things rather than go through MDOT? Because in my experience, like, they've been pretty sick of us complaining about construction. They're just ignoring it. That's generally what's going on. And a couple people that I have spoken to, it seems like they're on the side of the construction companies are getting paid because they don't care at all. So if there was one representative that maybe could have this conversation with us who could do the stop signs and stuff, that'd be very helpful.
I will put you in touch with the Metro, the NDOT traffic engineer that's in charge of that.
Okay,
And
that'd be
go
great.
from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always stops go through the Traffic and Parking Commission. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if the department denies the always stop request, you can still petition for it through the Traffic and Parking Commission, I believe. So.
Me again.
Yep.
So, all right, let's pretend we don't get a stop sign at Hamilton Hagen. Is there a reason why the bulb outs and all of the fancy intersection things that you're doing on the west haven't been put on Hamilton and Hagen?
Yeah, and I'll admit a lot of Hamilton and Hagen has been in sort of flux, construction over a while.
Really? You don't say.
But it's also not as wide. It's even as it is, or it has been, in the phases of construction and all the things that have been going on there, it's not as wide. And so
North, south, or just total square foot?
diagonally,
Okay.
corner to corner, diagonally. So we looked at that at those other two intersections and saw those were huge intersections. You could fly right through them, and so that's why we wanted to do that treatment there. There is on the north.
But there's stop signs at those other intersections, so you're making it look pretty, but there's already stop signs there, so people can't fly through them unless they're flying through a stop sign.
You're right. You're right. We kind of just did it at the always stop as well because of just kind of making the match, and it was so wide, and wanting to that's this one, eliminate that left turn lane.
Sure.
Tighten that up. So
But at a stop sign, that
you're right.
I'm not trying to shit on your work. I'm pleased.
No. I'm
They're
fine.
going to stop no matter what. So that's not like they're beautiful and they're going to make the neighborhood look nice, but that doesn't seem to change anything of our actual reality right now because there is still a four-way stop sign. It's just going to be narrowed and look a little better. So that's cool, but that doesn't help. It doesn't change what we're already living in. I still can't comprehend why this huge study of this entire block has put 2 bulb outs and a radar in a location where there's 5 people. And then in the side of the neighborhood where there's a whole lot of going on, we just get a couple speed cushions. When there's an intersection that would benefit way more than either of these two. Like whether we have a left-hand turn lane on to Fort, it doesn't change the traffic flow.
Right. In our opinion, the way we look at this is like the speed cushions is like the top. That's what we want to do them because it's the most effective. So when we see this as a whole, I think we're seeing like we're gonna get the slowest speeds on your end of the street, not on the other end. And the radar feedback sign is because we couldn't put a cushion there because it was too steep to install. So we wanted to not do anything. So we thought that would be helpful to start to set that speed from the beginning. So they're not speeding, so that those 3 blocks, they're not speeding this 3 blocks and then reaching the speed cushions and having to really change. We want a consistent speed.
So is that radar sign basically like a psychological thing? It's not an actual.
They are effective, but it is psychological because it doesn't physically slow the driver down. The driver has to brake because they see it and they realize they're speeding.
That just again, I just have a lot of logistical questions about why things are landing the way that they are. If you're turning off of 8th and there's a radar thing, I don't even think you can accelerate over 35 in the amount of time that you've got that. So that
it's 25. We want them going 25. So
still, I mean, I think it's 800 or 900 feet. You'd have to floor it to get over 25 downhill before it actually impacts because there's a stop sign at the bottom of the hill again. So I don't know.
Well, there's not a stop sign at Ridley.
No, you're right. Yeah, but there is right on the other side.
There is on the other side of
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. But there's nothing there. I mean, that's a bridge, and then there's like the Harpeth Hall thing, which is a gated off thing. There's no one's impacted other than they get a full head of steam and then stop. So like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I just like it feels like the neighbors aren't actually getting protected here, and we're just putting a lot of lipstick on the part of the neighborhood that doesn't have anything going on right now.
Yeah, and
I feel like we deserve more.
I understand what you're saying. I think our goal is to use all the tools that we can to get the speed for the whole length of the street. So we look at
Sure.
it 8th all the way to Martin.
Sure.
And we can't put cushions on the bridge, so that's why they're not there. We otherwise maybe have put it between those two intersections, but we can't drill into that that concrete.
And the other intersection, Hagen and Hamilton, is narrow, as you said,
Correct.
a design constraint.
Yeah, it's right. You know, these corners are being sort of formalized. This one is not, but this one has been formalized with this development on that corner, as well as the Queens. This one is called Queens, right?
Yep.
The Queens development. So it's already being kind of formed out.
Can you zoom in on the intersection just a little bit, even though it's not going to be the highest resolution? Is that possible?
I cannot. This is
Okay.
my screen. Sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of, I mean, comparing the two, I mean, the other intersection's like 100 feet wide, and this is much more narrow.
Can we help form out those other two corners at Hagen and Hamilton?
Not in this program. We don't do that with concrete. I mean, we could look to see if there was any the striping that could be done.
That would be so helpful. Just something has to be done there. There's so much traffic that's going through that neighborhood, that particular intersection, and it's just a clusterfuck. It's just unsafe.
And it'll get worse when Standard Assembly gets fuller and when the
Queens finishes.
the thing across the train tracks opens. Yeah.
I mean,
We knew that was coming, you know, obviously that under construction, we looked at those plans. So that's kind of how we landed on where to put that, because we know they're having a driveway in here as well. So, yep. All right. So I'm going to leave this. Does someone have something else to say?
Sorry, I just wanted to mention, kind of like Vince's point, you know, where that speed sign is, that radar sign, you know.
Maybe it's not as useful.
There are one houses that it would be better close to Martin. But of course, 2 radar signs is even better, and 2 cushions in between Hagen and Martin is also better.
I think that was what I was going to summarize as well. So thank you. Okay. I will relay the information again about Hagen and Hamilton being a request for always stop, and
I would love for someone to watch it for 20 minutes between 4:30 and 5:30 on a weekday. Just it is so drastically different than where it was last fall.
And we will do our best to align 2 sets of cushions between
Hagen and Martin.
If not possible, consider signage. If
not possible, we will consider the signage.
Wanted to move the radar sign into that area, that also is nice.
Or add one. Okay.
Or add more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. And I'm sorry. And thank you.
No. We're gonna wrap up, and then we can go back to more discussion and questions. But I want to make sure we get to like, what are our next steps here, right? So started with the application. We've had our first meeting, you know, the street was selected. We had our first meeting design, and now we're having our second meeting where we're presenting this plan to you with the details. From here, I'm going to do the things we just talked about, and make those edits, and then we can have a third meeting to go over it, or we, unless there's, or we could go in straight into the online ballot with the plan changes. So what happens with the online ballot is the property owners, the residential property owners along the street will get the postcard with a means to vote, but that will also give you a link to the plans that will be similar to the ones I've just presented, but they will be posted online, and with ever edits that we have made thus far, or at following this meeting, those plans edits would be there. So you would see it before you vote yes or no on it. And then from there, if the ballot vote is successful, I may go into more details on the ballot, but then we would move into construction. So that's kind of the life cycle of the project and how we get to the end result, which is we want to get this stuff built so that it's slowing cars on your street. So the balloting portion is, like I said, the postcards that go out, and they have unique IDs that are associated with the eligible properties that can vote. And the voting is a 6-week period of time, and it's marked on the mailer, you know, when the voting closes. So respondents have an opportunity to review the plans, and then they can vote yes or no. And so if 66% of the voters vote yes, then the project moves forward. So it's not, I want to be clear, it's not 66% of the property owners on the street or the properties on the street. We need 66% of the respondents to be yes in order for the project to move forward.
I have a question on that. Are all the new residents of Queens building eligible?
If they are, yes, if they're, not necessarily if they're occupied, but if they are, let's go into.
Renting versus owning, does that matter?
It does. So if they are, if they've got their like use and occupancy and it's a residential property and that's the way it's marked on the metro property maps, then yes, they would get an opportunity to vote. The ballot cards go to the property owner's address. So if the property owner lives in Nebraska and they're renting it out, the property owner in Nebraska, if that's where their address is, that's where the property or the postcard is mailed. If there is a property owner that owns multiple properties, then they still only get one vote. So, you know, if say a property owner owns, you know, 4 townhouses in that zone, they're only going to get one vote, so they don't, you know, outweigh those other property owners. Then vacant properties are not eligible. So if there's property that's, you know, it's residential property but it's under construction and it's still marked on the parcel map as being a vacant property, then it's not getting a vote or eligible to vote. And then businesses, so commercial properties, are not eligible to vote. So I've X'd out some properties that show up here in this zone of which properties are commercial, so they're not gonna be eligible to vote or get a vote. But all these individual properties, and they have some common frontage that that is along the length of the street that's affected by the traffic calming, they are eligible to vote. So it looks like in, because this is the Queen's property, I've got my mouse over here, right? So it looks like it is marked as one parcel. I mean, I don't know, I made this a couple of weeks ago, I think. But if it's marked as one parcel, so are those rentals, maybe? Those
Yeah.
units are rentals?
It's
So
the address
just
is 619A number 420, 169A 419. They're individual apartments.
they're individual apartments.
It's an apartment complex. I don't know what the
It's
proper
an
term
apartment
is.
that's rented. Okay,
Yeah.
so the property owner, then it's like it's one parcel on
Got
the parcel map, so it gets one vote. So it will go to the owner of the building, not
If
all the apartments within it.
if we don't get the 66 yes on the first vote, is it done? Or is there an opportunity to tweak and then revote?
So it is done for vertical measures. So, but then we would, the NDOT team would go back and put together a modified plan that did not include the vertical measures. And so we would incorporate most likely more radar feedback signs and not the cushions if it did not pass. I will say that we've balloted probably 100 or more streets, and the success rate is about, it's like 93% or something, 92%. So mostly these projects are supported by the property owners along the street. I'm not going to give you any, like, we certainly have had streets that did not pass, and so we've had to go back and do a less intrusive plan that just included signs and striping and no physical vertical measures. But for the most part, these have been pretty widely accepted and wanted.
I don't want to be an asshole, but just to hark on my point one more. When we look at this ballot zone map, look where all the X's are, and then look where all the changes happened. That's how that feels. That's a perfect example of how I feel like we're not being protected as the residents of the block. It's just all going out where there's X, 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 X.
Yeah, and like I said, our standard spacing is somewhere around 400 feet, and
Yeah,
that's what the plan shows. So we applied our standards to that segment of the street. We would have even done it further out, but we couldn't. So
yeah,
the limitations. But I understand, and we want you to be, involved and want this and get your neighbors to vote for it as well. So yeah, we encourage you as you get your postcards to do exactly what some of you did for this meeting, is to remind people to do it and vote, because we want those votes to come in and people to know about the project. Like I said, the plan will be accessible via the link that you can use on the postcard to vote. So people will be able to view the plan before they decide if they are in favor of it, so they know what they're voting on. Another thing about the postcard, I would say, is that there is a phone number on there, so that, if someone gets a postcard and they're unable to vote online for whatever reason, they can reach out to NDOT directly and get some help there. So this is kind of our trajectory of getting it from today to the install and construction. So typically after our second meeting, we will get the postcards in the mail within 2 weeks, so that you all are able to start voting. Our voting window is 6 weeks long. Like I said, the closing date of the voting will be on the card as well. And then if it's successful, we will move forward with ordering the materials and construction, and that's about an 8-month period of time to get that installed from the closing of the ballot.
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, I know. It is a long time. We've got a huge backlog and installing as fast as they can, but we want to be upfront about it. And I know you've waited a long time already. So we're NDOT is certainly working to make that faster, but we want to be transparent about how long it takes.
Putting 2 stop sign in would be really quick. You get it done in 25 minutes.
If we buy stop signs and just put them in, is anyone going to notice or care?
Yes, I think so.
I don't know.
Eating monks. My God.
So, right, the NDOT doesn't keep all these materials on hand, but we do order them in big bulks now so that we can get them out. But it just takes some time to get the contractors to get them all out in the order of that we're doing so many streets now. It's a big program. So that's that. Here's my contact information. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe Aaron or Vince or someone that's was applied for the program or some one of you must have organized the meeting, right? That with Darlene to set up this meeting, the date and time. No, okay. Must
No,
have-
meeting 2 was just told to us. in
6
a
months
postcard.
from, yeah.
All right, all right.
Hey, Aaron, I just sent you my phone number in a chat. Aaron, if you want to text me, we can all email
Yeah,
collectively if you'd
'cause
like.
I'd love to just give you feedback before you just get the ballot in the mail so that you know what the plan is. Just to kind of close that loop before we send it out to ballot. But for anyone that may listen to this after, we've already discussed what we're looking at doing to enhance the plan. So this is our, NDOT social handles, and this QR code and web address takes you to the Traffic Calming website. So that is where the results of the ballot will be posted. So a few days after that ballot closes, you'll be able to look up what the results were and know that it's moving forward, or you may be looking for a revised plan if it doesn't pass. But like I said, they've been largely successful. This is also where you could look up and see other traffic calming plans, or your traffic calming plan will be on there as well. So, and links to the meetings and all of this great information is at that website. But like I said, if you wouldn't mind someone sending me a email, it doesn't have to be right now, but in the next couple of days, then we can touch base. But in my opinion, I think what we would do is to see if we can make a couple of tweaks to this plan pretty quickly and still get the ballots out to you all in the next 2 weeks or so.
That'd be great.
Does anyone on the call have any reservations for that? I think that's the fastest way to the end result. But we're happy to meet again if that's desired. I am seeing a comment in the chat, and I think this is one we already discussed. The corner of
That popped up when I was rambling.
okay.
Just
Thanks.
about it's that intersection. That
Gotcha.
intersection is
Yeah, we
very
covered it.
unsafe.
Thank you.
Great. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is any other questions from anyone? Sorry, I kept you here longer than.
If we have to sit and talk to you for an hour to try and make our neighborhood safe, it's worth it. We don't get a lot of input on our neighborhood recently, so this is really nice to be able to do that. Thank you.
All right.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Aaron, you got my email? One of you did?
Uh,
I got it.
Okay, that's okay, great.
Yep.
Then we will, if you just shoot me an email, then we can, I'll follow up with more information
Awesome.
and connect you with the traffic engineer about the intersection and the stop sign.
And just to clarify, if stop signs just show up, what happens?
I do not think that's advised.
Got it.
It'll probably be taken down.
Got Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your time and your effort, and we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for your patience, and we look forward to seeing this project to the finish line. So we'll be in touch and look for those ballot cards in your mailboxes soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.